Hi, folks. We're doing graphing again, and this is one of my favorite types of graphing. We're going to be using the standard form and graph an equation from standard form. And there's a couple of ways to do it. I haven't previewed it, so it'll be a surprise. We'll see how it looks. I suspect that they're just going to give me integral. Yep, figured that was what they're going to do. Basically, we're going to look for the X and Y intercepts, and then we're going to graph them and use them to graph our point. So yeah, we're supposed to use the intercepts. So a good plan and what's a really good habit to get into, and I'm going to go ahead and write this, minus 7y equals 28. I believe the best plan is to do the following. To find your y-intercept, we're going to let x equal 0 because that's what the y-axis represents. These are the points 0, 2, 0, 4, 0, 6. To find the x-intercept, we're going to let the y value equal 0. Now, I'm actually going to write this in two places, but normally I would only need to write this once because in just a minute, I'm going to show you what I do. So when I'm solving for the y-intercept, what I do is I substitute the 0 in for x, and that gives me 4 times 0 minus 7y equals 28. And I don't ever actually do this, but what I do is I just simply say, well, this is just 0, isn't it? And so I cover this up. And what's left is negative 7y equals 28. And then in my head, I divide by negative 7 on both sides and get negative 4. Sorry, I should have written that, I guess. There we go. What I want you to notice is that if I put a 0 in for x and I put a negative 4 in for y, it makes this equation true. Now I'm going to do the same thing down in the bottom one. And what I do is I don't actually substitute it in and say, oh, this is equal to 0 and blah, 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 blah. What I do is I cover this up with my finger and say, oh, 4x equals 28, divide by 4 on both sides, and I get a 7. So this is my y-intercept, this is my x-intercept, and I'm done. Now be careful. It is really easy to get these backwards. 7, 0. If you think about it and you say, oh, 7 is the first number, a lot of times you're going to go to on the y-axis and put it on there. But here's how you can avoid that issue. Does everybody see that that is an x value? That means that it is an x-intercept and it is on the x-axis. X, 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 X. See it? That's 7, 0. It's right there. And what about my 0, negative 4? That is a y value. It's on the y-axis, y, 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 negative 4. It's right there. And we're done. That's it. That's all there is to it. Now, clearly, it's a lot faster when you can cover it up and do it in your head. So we're going to do another one. Now, this one I'm going to do a lot less work. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and write it. X plus 10y equals negative 10. Now, you absolutely don't have to write these down, but I recommend that you do so. So I'm going to find my y-intercept like this. I'm going to find my x-intercept like, I'm going to find my x-intercept by letting y equal 0. So, and again, I don't usually write this twice. I usually just do this with my finger, but anyway. All right, so I'm going to let x equal 0, and I get 10y equals negative 10. So y would then be negative 1, and I'm done. I would let the y be 0. Here it is. And I get x equals negative 10. And then I graph. This is my x-intercept. And this is my y-intercept. And I'm done. It's that easy. All right, so let's go a little faster. X minus 6y equals negative 6. I'm going to graph the y-intercept. Be careful. I'm going to graph the x-intercept. So I'm going to let x equals 0, and I get negative 6 divided by negative 6, which is 1 for the y value. And for the other one, x minus 6y equals negative 6. I'm going to let the y equal 0, and x is equal to negative 6. Be careful. That's an x value. There it is. This is a y value. There it is. And I'm done. Didn't think it could be this easy, did you? That's why we like standard form. So let's see if I can do it up here. If x is 0, cover up the 2x like this, and you get negative 2. Now I'm going to take it back off again. And this time, I'm going to let y equal 0. And I'm going to cover up the y value, and I'm going to get x equals 3. I highly recommend writing both of these points out and saying to yourself, this is on the x-axis. This is on the y-axis. It's so much better if you write the points. I guarantee you're going to make a weird error if you don't do it that way. Okay? Trust me, I promise. I've had some experience with this. All right. Looks like some big numbers going on there. I'm going to guess that 14 and 16 both go into 1120. That's my guess. They both go into 112 probably, but let's find out. So I'm going to let it, I'm just going to do it on the side over here. 14x plus 16y equals negative 1120. So in order to find the y-intercept, I'm going to let x equal 0, and I'm going to end up dividing by 16 on both sides. So I'm literally taking 16 and putting it into negative 1120, excuse me. So 16 goes into 112, maybe 7 times? Is 7 times 16 equal 112? It sure is. But don't forget that 0 over there. See that 0 over there? That means that it's going to be 70, isn't it? And we don't want to forget that we have a negative for real. So we have a negative 70. And you could just grab a calculator and check it, but there it is. Now the other side, I'm going to put the 14 into that number. And I want to show you something, how I'm going to do this problem a little faster. So if you've ever seen a factor tree, it looks something like this. Now we happen to know that 16 times 70 is 1120, isn't it? And this is going to help you tremendously when you get to a thing called factoring. But isn't this 7 times 10? And this is 2 times, oh, dang it. Okay. That is not making me happy. Hang on, sorry guys. There. All right. 16 is 2 times 8. I'm going to put it down here. The reason I'm showing you this is because it's going to save you time in the end. Trust me, I promise you're going to see something pretty cool here. I'm going to do a kind of a factor here. Okay, so this is 2 times 8, isn't it? 8 times 2. Okay, here's the reason I did that. What number is 2 times 7? That's my 14. And the 8 times 10 is the 80. This kind of factoring where you move around and combine your factors inside your factor tree is extremely valuable later in the course. So anyway, I thought I'd mention it. So 14 times 80, when I divide by 14 on both sides, because when I put the 0 in for the y, that, I'm going to divide by 14 and I'm going to get negative 80. So I have negative 80, 0, which is right there. And I have 0, negative 70, which isn't actually showing on my deal here. Negative 70 right there. And there's my graph. 0, negative 70 is on the y-axis. Negative 80, 0 is on the x-axis. I know, more than you wanted. Now, this one's going to seem awful easy in comparison, isn't it? At least I hope so. So I'm going to put the 0 in for the x, and I'm going to cover up the x, and I'm going to get y equals 7. Then I'm going to put the 0 in for the y. I guess I'll put it right there. I'm going to put the 0 in for the y, and I'm going to get 7x equals 21. Divide by 7, and you get the 3. Now be careful. This is an x value. It's on the x-axis. This is a y value. It's the y-intercept. It's on the y-axis. And we're done. Another easy one. I'm going to put the 0 in for x, and I get -10 for y. You can see that I'm moving a little faster as we go along. Now, the thing is, I don't erase it. I actually just use my finger to cover it up. I'm going to let the y equal 0, and I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides and get 30. So 0, -10 is on the y-axis, isn't it? And 30, 0 is on the x-axis. And we're done. Okay. I'm going to let x equals 0. I like to do that one first because you normally graph the y-intercept first anyway, especially when you're dealing with slope-intercept form. So I like to do that one first, and then I'm looking for my y. Notice I'm dividing by -1 on both sides, so I'm going to get +10. Then I do my x value, and that means putting in a 0 for the y. So this time we're going to put the 0 in for y, and we get 2x equals -10, which gives me my -5. I can literally do this in just a couple of seconds because I'm using my finger to cover up the parts. Anyway, 0, 10 is located right there, and -5, 0 is on the x-axis. It is really easy to make mistakes, so be careful. There you go. Okay, this one's not so bad. I want to mention if 640, 64 is the operative word there. And for those of you who know, that's 8 times 8 is 64, but I need 8 times 80, don't I? Now the other one I need is 16. So here's my trick for doing 16. Watch this. I'm not gonna factor this one. I'm gonna factor the other one. Watch this. You'll see what I mean in a second here. 2 and 40. Look at that. Isn't that 16 times 40? Anyway, just some thoughts to help you help do this, make this a little easier for you. So I'm going to let x equal 0, like I said before, and I'm going to divide by 16 on both sides, which of course gives me -40. And then I'm going to put in my 0 for my y, and I'm going to divide by 8 on both sides, which gives me my -80. And there's my two intercepts. Be careful, the 0, -40 is on the y-axis, and the -80, 0 is on the x-axis, and we're done. Okay, this one's not so bad. It looks bad, but it really isn't that bad. You got to remember that 7 times 8 is 56. And I'm going to use my little factor tree over here, make it easier. Obviously, it's 56 times 100, isn't it? Hopefully that's clear. And I need an 8 and a 7 to get 56. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to put the 0 in for x, and then I'm going to look for the y. So I'm going to cross out the x part, and I'm going to look for the y. I'm going to divide by 8 on both sides. When I do that, don't I get -700? Sorry, it's got a little funky look in there. Now I'm going to put the 0 in for the y, and I'm going to cover up the y part. And I have 56. I'm going to divide by 56 on both sides, and clearly that's going to give me -100, isn't it? So those are my two solutions. -100, 0 is right there. And 0, negative 700, can't quite see it. That's on my y-axis, which is right there. And we're done. $600. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Now, a lot of people are going to have trouble with 12 times 50, but they're not going to have any trouble at all with, say, 60 times 10, huh? And yeah, that might not be the best, but that's okay. I could do, let's do 6 times 100. Sorry, guys. I was going to try and make it easier for you, but let's do 6 and 100. And let's split this one up into 2 and 50. Now, there's a reason I did that. It's just because a lot of people aren't going to see that 12 times 50 is equal to 600. Now, the other number that I need is 15, don't I? Well, that means I need a 3 somewhere. And there's lots of ways to get the 3, but here's the best way. So when I'm just gonna write this as 12 times 50 just to remember. And then I'm just going to ignore this part for a second. Now, if I need 3 and a 5, this is 5 times 20. Now, let me show something here. Okay, so there, I'm gonna get rid of this too. Okay, there we go. So this is 3 times 2, isn't it? And this one is 5 times 20. And what you'll see is that I've got 3 times 5 is 15, and 2 times 20 is 40. It's not necessary to do that. I just find that this is kind of what I'm doing in my head when I'm factoring in my head. And again, I'm going to tell you, this is going to be very useful later. Don't forget your negative on there. So I'm going to put in my 0. I'm going to divide by the 15 on both sides, and I'm going to get the negative 40. Then I'm going to put my 0 in for y. And I'm going to divide by 12 on both sides and get my negative 50. Now, I wouldn't have had to do anything to get this. That one, I would have just simply done it in my head, and then I would have used the 12 times 50 and redone it a little bit to get my 15 times 40. Anyway, that's hopefully a good shortcut for you. 0, negative 40 is on the y-axis, and negative 50, 0 is on the x-axis. So be careful, make sure you get the right one. Oh, this one's much easier. So I'm going to put in a 0 for x, and I'm going to cover up the x part. That gives me negative 10. I'm going to divide by negative 10 on both sides and get 800. And then I'm going to put in my 0 for the y. And I'm going to cover up the y part. I'm going to divide by 20 on both sides. And it looks like I get negative 400, huh? So let's graph those 2 points. 0, 800 is right there. And negative 400, 0 is right there. And I'm done. Oh, another easy one. So we have a 0 for x. And I want to find the y value that will make this true. And I need 100. I want to mention one more time why this is a solution. Look, 50x plus 5y has to be equal to 500. Well, if x is 0, this is just 0. And 5 times 100, doesn't it make this true? You see, the whole idea of being on the graph is that it is a solution to the equation. And look at that, 0 plus 500, sure enough, is equal to 500. So this right here is a solution to that equation. That's why it's part of the graph. And anytime you have a solution, it's part of the graph. So for the other part, the other solution I'm looking for, by the way, the reason I'm using zeros is because they're easy. I love zeros. There's other things you could have used. It's just that zeros are easy to work with, because when you put the 0 in, that part's gone, and you divide by 50 on both sides and you get 10. It's pretty easy, isn't it? See that? So be careful. That is an X value. That is a Y value. Don't get those backwards. 0, 100 is up here. 10, 0 is right there. And you're done. That's it. Looks like we might just have one more. And it's not that bad. Hopefully you see that 8 times 50 is 400. If you didn't happen to see that just right off the bat, it's really obvious this is 4 times 100, isn't it? And the 2 times 50, hopefully, is just about as obvious. Sorry, helps if I actually write it. There we go. And there's your 8 times 50 if you needed it. All right, I think this may be my last one, so I'm just going to go ahead and just do my shortcut. I'm going to put in a 0 for X, and I'm going to divide by -10, and we just get 40, huh? Everybody see that? This is 40 times 10, if that helps. And I'm going to put in my 0 for Y. Get rid of this one. If I put the 0 for Y and I divide by 8, there's my 8 times 50 is equal to 400. So I'm dividing by 8. And don't forget, you have a negative here. So when you divide by 8, you get -50. And just as a final check, see, if I put in the 40 right there, I get -400. If I put the -50 in times the 8, I get the -400. So anyway, that's my Y value over here. This is a Y value right there. And this is an X value over here. And it looks like we might be done. And that was it. Hope you enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite sections, and I hope you see why. And I'll see you back. Bye-bye.